Hey guys, welcome to Tabletop Terrors. I am joined this evening, as always, by my brother James, but especially excited about another guest that we have, Nate from WASD20. I'm pretty stoked. Tonight, here's what we're going to do. We're going to force our way into figuring out some sort of semblance of a shambling mound of a map for our campaign world of Dragongrin. I'll give you a quick background. James and I do a world-building podcast called Damage Reduction, and we are absolutely all about progress over perfection. So as we build this world on this podcast, things change all the time. The landscape has changed, the concepts have changed, but we really feel like this is the time to get an outline for the map. So the first half of this video, James and I are going to be working with Nate, picking his brain, and figuring out what the shape of our map might be. And then once we figure that out, we're going to ask him questions about how we would go about commissioning him to do such work. So this is going to be a video with a lot of ancillary, cool, interesting stuff about fantasy mapping that isn't exactly fantasy mapping, but all the things that surround it. I want to go ahead and give Nate a chance to introduce himself and plug anything he wants to plug. So, Nate, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, so my name is Nate, and as Tim said, I run the channel on YouTube, WASD20, which most of you probably know, and I also have a recent venture known as Sell Sword Maps, and have been working with you absolute tabletop guys and other DMs and just hobbyists and interested people who want me to make them maps. And that's been a new experience for me in the past several months, and it's been really positive and really great. And don't claim to be an expert, always making progress, but I dig the whole progress over perfection thing. Just do it and see what happens, and you keep getting better, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. And if you're interested in that, if you're interested in what Nate's doing, he's actually doing one of his events this Friday night. Put it on your calendars. It's called The Mappening. Nate, do you have any plans on what you're going to be doing this particular mappening?
Well, I've got a commission that I'm working on now for a guy, and I'm going to be working on that a little bit. And I figure as things come up, I'll probably address them if people are struggling with things or want me to show them how I might do something. Address that. I've got a couple of questions so far already, and if people have questions they want me to address, they can always message me over at WASD20 on Facebook or Twitter, YouTube, whatever. And that's a good place for people to express questions that I can then address on the mappening.
Yeah, that's perfect. So if you're watching, whether you're watching live with us now, thank you to everybody who is tuning in, or if you're going to be watching later, fantasy mapping is something that I'm no good at. I know what I want to see, but I can't make that a reality. So if you're learning this stuff, the best thing to do is just steep yourself in it. Watch Nate's mappenings, join him this Friday if you can live, and just jump in. I can't express to you enough that we have no idea what we're doing. So at this point, I think I was clicked on James that whole time. At this point, I'm a stream rookie, but at this point, we are purposefully saying, okay, here go a bunch of puzzle pieces that we have. James and I work with Absolute Tabletop. It's a independent publisher, and we come out with books, but so far none of those books have had maps. And maps are the number one thing that people ask for. They're like, hey, is there a map that I can kind of make my character from somewhere? It gets people a sense of your world, what's happening, landmarks, things like that. And we don't have anything like that. So, the first thing I want to ask Nate is because we are genuinely looking to commission somebody to make this map. James, how are you doing on your contest entry for Nate?
Pretty good. I'm actually working on it right now. It's going pretty well. It takes a lot of time. I would say it's the number one thing. And yeah, Nate definitely makes it look easy. That's the number one thing I think I'd say.
No, he does. And so the reason why I bring this up is because Nate is also doing a map contest. If you guys aren't a part of that, I'll link it in the comments of the video. But I tried my hand at that as well. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll jump in. I know Photoshop. I do a bulk of the absolute tabletop artwork. Mapping is a whole nother world, man. It's a whole nother world. So, Nate, I want to kind of just pick your brain here. You've got this side of the fence, which is we're an independent publisher. We're looking to get a map made. We come to you for a commission. What do you need from us? What do we need to have ready for you as far as the essentials to start this process?
Well, you don't need anything, but there's a lot of things that help. One of the best things is just a rough sketch, and a little information about flavor. Sometimes people will send me a maybe another map that they like the style of, and a lot of times it's one of my maps that's like, I've got maybe a few different maps, and I would say generally they're, starting pretty rough and getting better. And, if someone says, I like that more rough style of one of your earlier maps, it's like bonus, because those are easier for me now, and it will be cheaper for the client then. But, it definitely helps if they have a style. And I think the rough sketch is optional, but it definitely speeds things along for me, and therefore saves the client time and money too. So, yeah, I'll give you an example of what Matt Click gave me when I did the Aronoff map, and it was basically, I'm just going to draw this on paper and show people. This is very rough, but if there was something shaped like this, that was just a bunch of bubbles basically with different region names. And that's basically, he then sent me kind of a rough sketch of the landmass too, but this was what the regions were on. It was just bubbles. And then, hey, it's up to me to then shape the coastlines based on that. That was kind of cool because it's like, okay, I have the general shape, but within that there's a lot of liberty.
And already I'm kind of surprised by that. Here's why. I assumed I needed to have more done. I thought that we needed to have a pretty solid idea of the coastlines and the geography and stuff like that. So I don't know where I got that idea from. Just, I guess, ignorance. But that's good to know.
I imagine it would be based on how much liberty you want him to take versus how much like, hey, there are definitely mountains here. There's definitely a lake right here. If you need there to be a bay, of course you got to tell him that. But if you're willing to give up some of that and say, hey, this is kind of the rough shape, go for it,
yeah.
Then I think you can get away with a lot more.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. And so it kind of depends on how much control people want and how much they've already got built,
Sure. So I think, all right, I'm going to share a technique with everyone watching, and this is something that James teases me for, but I'm going to show you all, this is a way that you can do what Matt Click did. Instead of doing the bubbles, I'm going to share my screen at the risk of embarrassment here. And so let me go ahead and pull up. This is the way that I do things when it comes to the map. So far, this is my first one I've ever done this for, and it helps me immediately communicate with James the shape, the style, kind of the general layout. So here, I'm going to share this right now. So what I've done is I've gone to Google Docs, and I have pulled up basically the Excel spreadsheet in the Google Doc, and I have just outlined there the basic regions that I want. Like down here's little islands on on the bottom left there. I've got my desert that's sandy called Jahar. I've got my jungle called Zaman, and then I've got my continents here. So if you're looking for a way to do this, and you have the artistic skill of me on paper, which is like a -5, this is a good way to add color, a little bit of shape within guidelines and also name some stuff. So, Nate, if I threw this to you and said, hey, here's what we're looking for, this would be enough for you to start.
Yeah, that would definitely be enough. Yep.
All right, cool.
That's really, I like that idea. It's really cool. I love how it's color coded. That makes it easier for me to like see like, okay, there's separate regions here.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Sweet.
Yep.
Now, the other thing, too, is I kept it relatively small enough so that I could see it on one screen, but if people wanted to go a little crazy with this, you can obviously work with the cells and make the continents more of a shape. I stuck with very basic sort of 8-bit Nintendo continent shapes for the rough idea, but if people wanted to go crazy, you could zoom out and treat these as pixels, essentially.
Yeah.
So, what you're looking at is a very rough version of Dragongrin. Okay? Now, what we're trying to do is think of this, number one, creatively, but also from a publishing standpoint. We're making a choice right away. We're going to do something that isn't quite as popular. I think we're going to go with a horizontal map. What are your thoughts on horizontal maps versus the vertical sort of, 8.5 by 11 normal letter size maps? Uh-oh. Did we lose Nate?
Looks like.
Either that or he's just really thinking this over.
He's got to chew on that one.
It literally, I'm going to click on him and see if it shows his face.
I don't think so. I think it'll just
it's
show.
not.
Yeah.
His thumbnail looks like he's going, ooh. So let me go ahead and... So I'll jump in here and say this, James. You and I talked about this recently. Based on what you're seeing here, we agreed that it probably wasn't a good idea to add another place.
Yeah.
Okay. So that mug to rock that we have there was going to be an orc island on the far west there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a picture of them like essentially invading Innis. So that is where you'll see that Innis, where you've adventured and where people have seen, a lot of appearances in the books and stuff like that. We've now made it so that orcs have invaded a part of it, making it more of a neutral zone. Oh, Nate's back. That was quick.
Maybe.
Maybe. So how do we position Uldane so that it borders Innis and the orcs can invade? Do we just leave it the way that it is and maybe spread it a little further out to the east and the west?
Well, I say we basically leave it the way it is.
Here's why. I want to make sure that no matter what we do, I like that the orcs are on the west and the Sphere Mountains and Grin are on the east, creating that narrow neutral zone of Innis in the middle. So that's the only thing.
Well, so yeah, I guess just add a cell to Uldane, but I mean, basically on a real map, you would just make it so that they connect in a place where the neutral zone isn't.
Right, so let's talk that through because I want it to be something... So actually, that would be kind of interesting. What if there was some sort of... I like the idea of an entrance or a bridge or something that isn't normal.
Yeah.
Like it's not just the border from, America to Canada, if that makes sense. Like something interesting. So hold on, let me jump in there and see. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. And so that's gone now. I'm going to leave this here just for the sake of clarity for now. So what if we take Varnholm up here? Got to make sure the Varnholm fits. And then, like you said, maybe do something in this neighborhood, like this situation, like this. Maybe something like that?
Yeah, basically like that.
Because what I envision is there had to have been something, if we're deciding that the orcs are from here instead of an island over here. Because what I did was I went tropey, like solving the problem with the plot kind of thing, where I was like, okay, put them on an island.
Yeah.
If we put the orcs here, there had to have been something stopping them from invading here this whole time. Would that have been just the powers of Innis, the forces of Innis? That's why I think it would be interesting if there was some sort of natural barrier here, like maybe the Sphere Mountains can pull up through there or something.
Well, you mentioned that there were more on the outskirts or where other races live.
Yeah.
So the idea is, I would say that, I mean, you could do natural barriers, but also, these cities that the orcs would have had to go through in order to get there.
So these cities would have been fortified and militaristically strong enough to keep the orcs away, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. So what I'll do then is, just for the sake of brainstorming, I will pick the right color gray. I will go ahead and I'll make these sort of like a blue, just for now, denoting. I don't know why I chose blue. I was going to say cities, but what if it is a body of water there? We don't have any inland water. Everything is ocean so far and bleak infested. So what is that interesting to you if we do some sort of inland body of water?
Yeah. I don't think that geographically it would span quite so large. I mean, I guess it can, but...
This is to scale. This is perfect. What do you mean, James? This is my masterpiece. but I agree with you. Oh, Nate's back.
Hey, I'm back. Yeah, sorry, my internet does this about once every 2 days, and it chose this hour here.
That's what I call Skip's third law. Skip from regular show. But yeah, I don't know why I chose that. So Nate, just to kind of catch you up,
yeah.
What we did was we removed. We essentially did what James calls the Justified. There's a TV show called Justified, and one of the things that show does most impressively is it uses resources and characters for multiple roles. So in Season 3, when you need an arms dealer, they don't come up with another one. They use the junky arms dealer from Season 1 and have him reappear. Essentially, the mapping version of that is sometimes we want to make a place for everything to live by itself. I think. So as mappers, we want to go, oh, well, here's where this culture would live. Oh, and I need a little place for this culture to live. But the problem with that is we're not really making conflict if we let everybody live in their own happy space.
Yeah.
So James and I wiped out an orc island from over here and said, no, we're going to make it so that the orcs live up here because that's much more ripe for conflict with all these other surrounding regions.
Yeah.
Now, before you cut out, one of the things I was going to ask you is, what is your thought on horizontal maps versus kind of the vertical one that you just did for Matt?
I mean, I like either, but I will say horizontal maps for some reason come more naturally to me. Like when I sat down to do a map of my own homebrew world, it was not really a question. I just sat down with a horizontal piece of paper for some reason. I don't know.
Really?
Yep.
What about you, James? Are you a horizontal or a vertical guy?
I don't really see them as different. They're just like, I don't know. Maps come in all different shapes and sizes, so the idea is the map itself isn't really horizontal based on what, I don't know. You could turn it sideways and it'd be the same map and it'd be vertical. You know what I mean? I'm like,
yeah, I guess to the people that live on that
north
side and travel north.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing. So it's like, well, north would be north, but I love those maps of the U.S. or rather the world that are turned upside down.
Oh yeah.
At least how we know it, because it's really there's no upside down for it. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's whatever the map is, that's the shape it should be.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Like,
go ahead.
a good example is like Westeros is sort of a vertical map, but the whole world of whatever they call that, Game of Thrones,
the known world.
Yeah, the known world is certainly not. It's I would call it horizontal, but really it's just a bunch of everything. You know what I mean? But I believe it's wider than it is taller.
Yeah, it is.
And I've seen the guy who does. Nate, you probably know who this is because you do map tutorials and stuff. But I've seen the website for the guy who actually does the map for Westeros.
Yeah, the fantasticmaps.com. I think his name is Jonathan Roberts or something.
Yeah, and it's a map that I probably wouldn't want for my fantasy world. He did a great job on the map, but it was just it's interesting to see that particular map because I look at it and part of it inspires me, but another part of it is it's just I don't know. There's something about it. It doesn't like call out to me. So, what do you think as far as when you're making a map? How much of it is your tastes, and how much of it is up to the person coming to you with wanting the commission? Like, do you tell them up front, like, hey, this is my style, this is what I'm going to do it in, or?
Not really. I mean, people tend to know my style, and I haven't branched out very much, yet. Like I said, I think my maps are usually generally getting better, but I think that people know my style, and if someone were to ask me, can you do a map in the style? Actually, I had someone, say, can you do a map in sort of a Viking Norse style? I just got an email about it today. I haven't even responded yet. And I thought, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, that would pretty much come down to me doing a similar sort of map, but maybe making the lines for structures and things a little more angular, and also then the text using, a Viking, a Norse style kind of text that's pretty angular too. So I'm willing to try new things. But in terms of the shape, you're talking about like the shape. Yeah, I think that I like it when people say, "Hey, take some liberties," because sometimes I think like I get a rough map for someone, I think that doesn't look right to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I would agree. The Westeros map, like the known world map, I should say, Westeros looks pretty good to me. When you get over to the other part, it's just kind of this big block of land, like it's almost like a rectangle.
Yeah, it's like he drew it in Excel for the artist.
And I think that there's a lot of maps that in some ways you can't go wrong. Like there are amazing fantasy fictional worlds out there that have maps that are just like, look at Middle Earth. Honestly, like it's not that spectacular of a map. I mean, the style that the map's usually done in is awesome, and Tolkien did versions of it himself that they're awesome. He was a great. I mean, his penmanship is stellar. It's awesome. But I mean, it's basically just a big landmass, and same is true of. Let me see if I even have it here. Whoop, there goes the bookend. Robert Jordan here. You look at the map of I don't even know what it's called. I can't remember. But anyway, the Wheel of Time map.
Wheel of Time.
And it's nothing spectacular. I mean, it's just a big landmass that goes off the map.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's weird. Maps are interesting in the way that they're really important in a lot of ways. But in a lot of ways, when you're playing in a game or when you're reading Robert Jordan's book, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Jarl DM, in one of these chats, we were playing a game. We were doing the Be a Better Campaign Master, Book 1. We were doing that hangout, and he quoted something that I will never forget. So now in my head I see, your players don't care what the coastlines look like. Jarl DM.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a spectacular degree of truth to that, but at the same time, it's important to know the boundaries and define the world. So,
yeah.
How would you interpret the Dragongrin map? So, if I said, "Hey Nate," and I'll screen share it again. If I screen shared this and this is what I sent to you, just a capture of this. In the same way that you said, the Viking stuff would be more angular, etc. How do you see a Dragongrin map? Where do you go with this?
I think that Dragongrin to me is, don't take this in an offensive way, it is inelegant. It is bold,
right,
more so than delicate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how that would, I think dark, thick lines. more so than thin and delicate. Yeah, I think that's something that would be characteristic of it. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question.
It is, and that's the question that I'm asking myself.
Yeah, because Viking and Norse, that's an existing culture, and we can go and we can see their writing and art, right?
Exactly.
Dragongrin is a fairly new homebrew world that you guys have done some awesome stuff with. But yeah.
Right. So what about you, James? What do you see if you had to sort of spitball with Nate? Like, what do you see as a Dragongrin map? What does it look like to you?
I just see like an Excel spreadsheet with colors in it. Like, that's just, I don't know. Do you mean as far as style goes?
Yeah, style. Like, let's say this outline is the one we go with. Because unless you have anything glaring that you're like, nah, this is going to be the outline we're going to go with. I mean, this is probably what I'll send Nate.
Well, I feel like this is a little, I don't want to use the word cheating, but I'm like, oh, it's sort of cheating, but I'm like, dude, I love those, what do you call it, like a three-quarter view,
like
really
isometric?
detailed maps, like those, just beautiful isometric,
an isometric map of Dragongrin.
Well, and it's like that map style where it's not, I guess it's isometric. I guess that's the best way to put it. There's a really cool one that I will put in the chat.
Let me ask the chat, because the chat is full of mappers. There's a lot of really great mappers in there. Infinite Roleplay and some of those other guys. Guys, are we doing it right? Is it isometric? Let's see here. I'm still screen sharing, so everyone's going to see this.
Tim, I sent a...
Yeah, I clicked on it. I'm screen sharing, baby boy.
Oh! Okay,
yeah.
Good. YouTube. Listen, I love that map, but I also understand that map is like... It's a lot of work. Based on what I have gotten done so far and what mine looks like, I'm like, dude, this is like one area of one place. I'm like, dude, that is... Yeah, that takes some effort. But I love that style. Absolutely love that style.
Sure.
But that's what I mean when it's sort of cheating. I'm like, I feel like it's cheating to say, I love a really detailed map.
Nate, what do you think about that map style?
I think it's awesome. I don't think I could do that. I mean, yeah, no, I think, it's really cool. But also, yes, it is just one little area. Like, this is one mountain range. I could be wrong. I don't think Dragongrin's just going to have one mountain range.
Well, and exactly. I feel like this is the kind of map that you draw, and then you put it all together when you're zoomed out, and it's like you can zoom in and see each part. And again, I'm like, no, this is assuming anything was possible, and I knew somebody that could do it, or I had an unlimited budget. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't expect that the map of Dragongrin will look like this, whether you do it or someone else did. But I'm like, no. But if you're asking me what style I like, I'm like, that one, love that one.
Yeah, it's super cool. Well, I'm doing my first full color map right now, and I haven't even started the color part of it yet. So, I mean, other than I did one that was like a town and surrounding forest areas that was colored, but this is the first like world map it's going to be in color. So we'll see how that goes. And I know that we kind of talked like about possibly collaborating with it too, where I can draw a mean map, but you guys are extremely talented in Photoshop. So there's potential for you guys to help out with some of the color and stuff too. But
right. In fact, I'll say this, that as it stands right now, this is our plan. Our plan is to commission Nate to officially do the Dragongrin map. And in that, we are going to figure out what that means to collaborate. Like he said, even if it means, at certain points, one of us steps in and even draws rough parts like, hey, can you do this? And then Nate goes back over it. Or I think it's going to be highly collaborative, but I can say and announce publicly, we are going to hire Nate from Sellsword Maps. You should also do that. Is it sellswordmaps.com?
Yeah.
So sellswordmaps.com, but how crazy would this be? And this will be the last question before we kind of shift gears, and we're going to do a sort of a discussion about commissioning and about freelance work. how crazy would this be to do what James suggested? Is that possible? Is it too big of a whale to try to eat? To make, let's say we have 5 regions, just for the sake of this example. Make smaller, hyper-detailed maps of the 5 regions that, when put together, zoomed out, make one map. Is that crazy talk, or would it be easier to just do a wide map and then do the regions one at a time?
It's not crazy. Here's the thing. If I were to have done that 4 months ago, let's say, and now
I'd be just finishing it now.
yeah. Let's say I finished it 4 months ago. You know, I guess for me, if you get a really experienced artist, their style is pretty set. They're comfortable in it. I don't feel like I'm there yet. I feel like my style, like I said, every map I make seems to be my best map personally.
Yeah.
And so if I were to make a huge map, and yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple ways to look at it. So I could make a huge map, and then every publication, you guys, if you're doing a specific region, you could just say, okay, now we just take this region. But if you wanted to start with a region, and then say now do the rest in a way that, like, the next supplement's going to have the section just west of that, right?
Yeah.
Then it would be like, okay, now I have to keep it to that style, but I'm not happy with that style anymore. I do it this way now.
Exactly.
I like this.
Yeah.
I like this way of doing mountains better now. I like this forest better now. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
See, that's a point I hadn't thought of. And so here's the concept, and we'll kind of wrap up on this because this is where I wanted to get. By the end of this part of the Hangout, I wanted to have in my mind something that James and I could discuss this week so that hopefully by the first or second week in July we can get you some thoughts like, hey, this is what we want to commission to start getting rates and stuff.
Yeah.
The Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin is going to be a medium view, not map, but it's going to be a medium view look at the world. It's not going to be so zoomed out that nothing is detailed enough to be useful. And it's not going to be so zoomed in as to be a deep vault where it's fully fleshed out in every single area. It's going to be something right in between, and we're calling it an atlas of inspiration. What you have just inspired me to think about is, who's making these maps? And I don't mean the meta, but what I'm saying is, let's say the region of Bismore. It shouldn't look like the same map as the region of Heiko, because the culture is different. Like you're saying, like the equivalent of a Norse map looking different than a 16th century map. So I think what we're going to commission you, and James, stop me or correct me, we're going to commission you to do the world map, similar to how you did for Aeronoth. And then each supplement, as we do zoom into these regions, because we do have plans to do that, but in good time, we'll have you do separate maps for each region in their own style, zoomed in, so that it fits the style of the book.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Starting, because that's the thing. Like I said, in a perfect world, I'd tell somebody, hey, make me a map like this, but of the whole world. But it's kind of like when you ask somebody what kind of car they want, like, oh, if you could have any car, they're not going to say a Toyota Corolla because I could actually afford that, So in that sense, I'm like, there would be very little cooler than having a real map of Dragongrin in your style, Nate. Like, that would be amazing. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's perfect. Because I agree that not all of the places, especially based on the way certain things Tim and I have talked about Dragongrin, the idea is, yeah, those places are going to look very different. It reminds me, or I like to think of it kind of like the way the zones in World of Warcraft looked. They all had one world map, but when you clicked on them, some of them were just different colors, but they were so different, even though they were kind of the same,
Yeah, Yeah.
I like that idea, where, like you said, Tim, it's like, well, no, I mean, this is who made this map? You know, it's made by somebody that lives there, possibly.
Exactly. So awesome. Is there anything, Nate, anything else you want to throw in before we kind of switch gears and make it more of a back and forth conversation on some of the things you wanted to discuss?
No, I mean, yeah, I just appreciate the conversation, and yeah, and it's just great working with you guys and the other Absolute Tabletop guys, and I'm excited. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, be sure to tune into Nate's Mappening. That's on Friday night. Nate, what time is it?
It's at 10 p.m. EDT.
Gotcha. So 10 p.m. and I think I'm going to try to join. I don't think I have anything going on, so I'll definitely be in the chat, probably tinkering around with an Excel spreadsheet. You know, like a pro.
The contest with his Excel spreadsheet.
Oh man, I so should.
That'd be awesome.
That's pretty great. The other thing I want to mention real quick to plug is this Saturday we have another Dragongrin game going on. It's interesting. I'm finding that to write this book, the best thing to do is for James and I to run games in the world. That's it. And so this is going to be featuring Rob from Performance Check, Mike from Mike the Piper, and Locrius Planetoid, just a role-playing dream team. And that is going to be this coming Saturday at 2:30 p.m. EDT. So tune into that, and I'm going to throw it back over to you, Nate. You said that you had some things you wanted to discuss and some stuff you wanted to ask us, so have at it, man.
Yeah, so I don't have like prepared questions or anything, but I just want to, you know, I guess, yeah, you guys have done some freelance work, you know, before, and you guys have told me like you're really cutting back on, you know, freelance work now because Absolute Tabletop should be consuming that time, and that's your baby now. And I think that's awesome that you guys are investing that because, you know, I know it's coming at a cost to you financially, taken away from what you could be doing to invest in this. And sure, you're making some money, but it's a slow-growing thing, right?
Yeah, the way Tim put it is we're giving up money now, you know, freelance projects that while they will take time, we're saying, I don't want the money now, I do want it, but we're going to give up the money now to hopefully invest in the future. And like you said, I mean, it's a little difficult, but hopefully it will pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, you know, in you guys' experience, what have been some of the joys and the pitfalls of doing freelance work? You know, because I'm pretty new to this, just in the last, I don't know, 7, 8, yeah, about maybe 9 or 10 months actually.
So I feel like I'd love to start out with the joys, as they number very few. Number one on the list is money. You do a job, you photograph a wedding, you videotape someone's event, you make a website, you design a flyer, whatever it is. Somebody pays you for it. Usually, if you're lucky. We only work for money, of course, but I certainly have in the past done work for free, and you make a little bit of, you might learn a little something, but what I've learned is it's simply not worth it. Simply not worth my time on this earth. But I would say the number one reason I do freelance projects is the money, and I'm not ashamed to say that. That's why I do them. You know, that's why I do the things I don't want to do. Tim, can you think of any other joys that you might consider come from it?
So there's a rush that occurs when you're able to imagine something and materialize it for a client who had no idea what they wanted. You know, they gave you some concepts, but you are the person that makes an intangible thought that they only could see the periphery of exist in front of them. Like, you nail their logo, and it's like, oh my God, it's better than I could ever have imagined. Like, that is such a great feeling.
I guess you are right about that. There is some measure of pride when we finish a project where I'm like, man, I don't care what the client thinks. This is awesome. And I love it. I don't always feel that way, but sometimes.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that it's it can be equally as painful when that feeling is ripped away from you.
Oh,
when
yeah.
they want something that just in your experience seems like a good idea now to them in their limited experience.
Yeah, and they're your clients. You can't say, listen, I've done this before, and it doesn't always turn out the way you think.
Right. And so that would be the joys. The joys are those two things. Obviously the money, because it helps pay for diapers for my daughter's rear end. And it's, I learned a long time ago that it has to be worth time away from my family.
Yeah.
And that's how I started deciding how I was going to charge. Bottom line is like, what's my time really worth? But that would be the joy, is, of course, providing for your family. So not just like money, 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 but knowing that something you did creatively, paid for something that the family needed. That's a great feeling.
Benefited. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so those are probably the two biggest joys.
Yeah.
So Pitfalls, I guess. We're on to Pitfalls.
Yeah. So here goes the rest of the chat. No.
Yeah, I'm like, seriously. Now,
do you want to go first, James, or do you want me to go first?
Do the 5-minute thing you guys do on...
Splatbook Roulette. Oh, my God. That's actually really great. You know what? I'll start a timer. We're going to do a freelance gripe roulette. All right, James, are you ready?
Yeah.
Go.
So, one of the biggest things about doing an event for people, and I'm just going to go all over the place. I'm going to go for the best
Scattergun.
The last wedding that Tim and I filmed, we got to they were doing it at this really nice place that was down the street. But everybody was staying at this really nice resort. So we get to the resort, and there's a shuttle set up. Now, we've been briefed on this because we were filming it. Well, it turns out that we are the only one that is there. We are the only two people that are there that have been briefed. The rest of this enormous family that has to get on a shuttle and go to where they're doing the wedding doesn't know what to do. Now, this puts us in a really awkward position because Tim and I are standing there. I've got my camera. We're both filming and stuff. And the bus driver comes up to us and says, "Hey, you need to tell them to get on the bus." And I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Yeah, they need to start getting on the bus." And I said, "Well, let them know that." And he's like, "Well, why don't you?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just filming it." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he doesn't say anything, and I'm like, so then I tell everybody to get on the bus, but I'm like, what? No, like that, no. So it's just a matter of like, it's just no matter what, there will be something that whether you end up doing or something that just isn't explained to you the right way, or there's always something else. There's always, and in that case, it wasn't like somebody expected us to do something else, but a lot of times it's something that's like tacked on. That's like, oh, hey, and just do this.
Sure,
and it's like,
and
if
I'll add to that. Let me, because we only have 5 minutes there, bro. But I'll add to that.
Go forever.
Say,
you're right.
So the thing too is that people, in most cases, when you're hired to freelance, unless you are very clear about the scope of the project, and I mean very clear, in writing, signed, they expect for you to do more and more and more and more forever and ever, amen. Like, we did a website, and we're done. We finished this website, and it was gorgeous, and it was awesome, and we were really proud of it. And then they were like, okay, great, so when do the blog posts go up? We're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
When are you going to have somebody write you some blog posts? So in their head, they thought that the people who designed the website should also write content. And luckily, we had a very clear pro forma of what the scope of the project was. And it was like, if you relook at the scope of the project, that's not in there. Content creation
that's
isn't
not
there.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a couple of minutes left. I'll dovetail off of that. Well, and let me say this other part here. It's all about time. Time is the one resource that we all have the same amount of. From the richest person to the poorest person, it's the resource that we all share equally. And when you have a day job, like James and I do, you have to decide where you're going to put that seed of time and what you're going to grow in what field. And one of my favorite quotes lately is, unused creativity is not benign. So it affects you. If you have a creative kind of heart and attitude, if you don't use that on something, it starts to rot in there. And I'm saying this because what I learned is freelance work does not scratch my itch of wanting to be my kind of creative.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm still at a day job. I'm just doing it at my house, doing a task for someone else that I don't really enjoy as much as I would, say, writing a story or coming up with a supplement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and that's the thing that I think, I think so far mapping worlds for other people does for me, scratch my creative itch, and it's, I don't have a huge desire to do my own world building, honestly. I don't.
Right.
Like, I run games, and I do enough to run games in my own world, and I enjoy that. And once in a while, I'll get inspired and write up a little paragraph about something, but...
I love that, though, man.
Yeah.
You found the right thing for yourself.
Right, and like you said, it's for your type of creative... it's not scratching the itch for the type of creativity you feel you need.
Exactly.
And maybe that time will come when I'm like, I'm just sick of this. I want to do something. I want to create my own thing now,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And it's iterative. It comes in waves, inspiration, and all that stuff. But we have 15 seconds left, and so I'll wrap it up by saying this. I knew that AbTab was the right thing for me when I was doing it in my time off from AbTab.
Yeah, exactly.
And time, so no more griping.
And I stole about 30 seconds to a minute from you guys.
You didn't steal? Dude, that was it, baby. Look, we had WASD20 on a gripe roulette.
Gripe book roulette.
Gripe book roulette.
Freelance roulette.
I dig it.
But I knew that we were doing something right when we just finished a book. We just stayed up till 4 in the morning on a Thursday, and the next day when I got home from work, my wife was going out of town, and I was excited because I had ideas for another book.
Exactly.
And I was like writing. I was writing, doing that for fun, and I thought, yeah, this is the thing I want to do.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, that's and I think I still have a lot to figure out for how to, how much do I value my time. The other thing I'm finding that's really interesting is like, so as I'm getting better, maps take longer.
Yes.
And so I kind of mentioned before, I hinted at the idea that, like, well, I don't want to do it in that style because I'm not satisfied with that style anymore. I feel like I've progressed, right?
Yeah.
And that's really hard now to limit because, when I started off, it was like, well, making a map for someone for $50 is like, hey, that's pretty good. Like, yeah, it only takes me like, maybe 2-3 hours. Now it's like 2-3 hours. I can't do a map that way. Like, I wouldn't be happy with it anymore.
That actually brings up something. And while this is technically a gripe and we're past that part, the thing I will mention about freelance work specifically, and this is about you personally, like me or you, if you're doing freelance work, is I and most people, I think, grossly underestimate the amount of time something takes. So knowing how long it takes to make a map for you is important, because I'm like, okay, well, we're going to be at this wedding for 4 hours. I'm like, well, yeah, but how long are you going to spend editing the video or editing the photos? And how many times are they going to need this, or what are they going to, it's like, it's not 4 hours of your life. There's no way. I mean, it's 12 if you're lucky. And it's the same thing where you're like, all right, I could draw this map in 3 hours. I'm like, okay, well, but can you change this? And you're like, all right, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours later. And, it's like, it's just, it gets away from you.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
And you're doing it right, Nate, when you're pushing yourself within it, like you said, like, we love and hate this part of writing a supplement for Absolute Tabletop. We'll get to a section, and we'll have some bullet points in a brainstorm, and we'll be writing. We'll all be in the Google Doc at separate times. And then one of us will write something that sort of expands into another thought. Like, it kind of defines the section a little more of what we're trying to achieve in the book.
Yeah.
And that's when we have that moment that goes, if we're going to do this right, we need to do this for all of them.
Yeah, you're like, we're not going to do this again. So you're like,
so
okay.
I just did, and I imagine you, like you said, when you're drawing mountains, you could easily. You do killer mountains. You could probably do this pretty quickly, but in the process, do you find yourself saying, no, these mountains need a little more character. Let me figure out how to do X or Y.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
See, and you can't quantify that until it happens, so it's difficult to charge for it. So
Right, like on the Aeronaut map, it was well, there was a few things that were like kind of like first, like I want to push myself because Matt's my friend and I really like the guy, and this is going to be published, and so I want this to be really good, right? Um, and one of the things was I think to take a step up, maybe I should try actually typing the text in GIMP rather than doing my own handwriting, which is, maybe it has some cool character, but it's a little less professional in general, in my opinion. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, and yeah, it took a lot of time. And Tim, you helped me out with a lot with that in terms of like figuring out how to get it to stand out, and it was trial and error. And I'm sure that a year from now I'll look back on it and say, oh, here it could be better in this way or that way. But yeah, that was something that I said, Matt, I want to try this. Are you cool with it? And he said, yeah, that's cool. And I was like, oh boy, okay, this is going to take some time.
Yeah, man. No, that's killer. And the map looks so great. If you guys haven't seen the Aeronaut map yet, it's on the Absolute Tabletop Facebook page. It's one of the posts we share. There's a really good photo of it, but there's something about having it printed that large.
Yeah.
And just I haven't even touched the thing. You have a physical copy, but I can
do
only
right
imagine.
here.
Oh
You
yeah.
had one. I forgot you had one. Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh man, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, man.
Again. I get so excited.
Yeah, oh, it's upside down. But yeah, this thing is, I couldn't believe how big it was when I got it. It's
That's so awesome.
See, like, to be honest, that isn't the most detailed map, but it fits at that scale. If
right.
everything was as detailed as that map we were looking at, I'm like, dude, it would be a mess.
Yeah. I mean, there are maps like that. Like the map in the Numenera book is a fold-out map. I think you have that one, don't you, James?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I don't have that book. No, you guys got that book, but I don't have it.
Okay. We didn't sucker you into it. Okay.
Not
That's
yet,
the way it
anyway.
often goes. Is like someone gets something and it's like, oh, I gotta get that too.
You gotta get
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
You resist
All the
it.
pictures, you're like, oh, that actually looks really cool.
That's the way it was for me because Matt got it and then I was like, oh, I gotta get that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's extremely detailed, and so it can work. It looks cool, but I was a little worried about it when Matt said, I'm gonna make a 18 by 24 poster of this, so can you adjust the borders a little bit to fit that? And I was like, 18 by 24. I hope it looks good at that size.
Yeah,
And
it looks
it looks
beautiful.
okay. So yeah, I'm satisfied.
So yeah, that's the beauty of the resolution that you work at is between, if you're at 300 DPI, essentially, especially at the size you designed it at, man, you can stretch it fairly large without losing any of that quality, and I think it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, thanks, man.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to throw it to the chat. If anyone has any questions, James, would you be so kind as to type them into the Google chat? If you see
I'm the
any
only
good
one doing
questions.
something. Jeez.
You need to wait for the mappening, buddy boy. You're tricking it. All right, everybody. Any questions for us? Any questions for Nate? If possible, try to keep it Dragongrin mappy kind of related. Versus like, what's your favorite color of horse? We will also answer those.
Obviously yellow.
I love a yellow horse.
Dude, I had a
I
horse
have a-
in Red Dead Redemption, and I named him Banana because he was yellow.
I have a question for you guys actually about Dragongrin.
Tell
So
me.
how would you guys describe Dragongrin? So I mentioned, to me in my mind, and based on what I've read of some of the supplements and playing in the game and stuff like that, like I mentioned bold. I don't know, how would you guys describe the feel of the world or comparisons you make to other worlds, or I don't know.
Do you want to go, James, or do you want me to go?
You go.
So I see it as stylized in this way. I think that when you look at it, it should look like something's wrong, but not look like, oh no, fire and evil. So like just spitballing here, and I'm the master of saying crazy stuff to try to get somewhere. So it would be interesting to me if, say, the waves, of the ocean, there was a particular portion of them that like stylistically looked like it was drawn and was cutting into the land, and there was like a little like slice with blood, like little things like that almost are meta, like Not just, hey, here's a picture of a map, but like the waves are these like circular sort of like sharp looking things, and every once in a while there's a little cut where they're digging into the land, or like I think it would be interesting if, so like the land of Grin where evil has won, it would be just subtle. Like what if it looked like a wolf's head biting the rest of the continent, or the region, and it's like just little things like that where at first glance it's like, oh wow, that map's interesting, and then you see it and it's got all these little subtle symbolic things, but it sort of all plays together. So not necessarily as realistic as the Aeronaut map, a little more stylized, but also not cartoony. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, that's cool.
So stuff like that, man, where it's like just these little pieces of character. Like, if there's a particular nation that maybe is very skilled at trade or something, maybe as it wraps around, it almost looks like there's a tongue coming out of it. Just weird stuff like that where it's like it has more traits and character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm excited to get working on that map, but I've got some questions from the chat. What is the name of a large city or two near the Sphere Mountains on a western side of Grin? I need them for my game Friday night. I don't know.
So I think this is an important. Well, I think this is a good time to touch on the idea, sort of that we had for Dragongrin, and that I think that we can talk about a little bit. The idea that if you run a game in the Forgotten Realms, now they do have maps, so this maybe isn't the best example, but the idea being if you run a map there, or run a game there, sorry, nobody's stopping you from making one up, and making it and sort of building it yourself, because especially right now, because there's so little that we have written about Dragongrin, we love to hear when people use our concepts and our ideas and they make it their own. In the same way, it's like you can run a little bit of stuff in Aeronaut, but once you go past whatever is on the map, or if you take a look at even the map Nate made, and you're like, oh, I want to go over here. Well, that place is a desert,
right?
So I'm like, well, do something cool there, but in Dragongrin.
And conversely, I would say this, because everything you're saying I agree with. I also understand that if I was running a game in Aeronaut, I would message Matt that exact question. Because there's something that inspires you about it, and if you're in touch with the creators, you maybe want to pick their brain. So I can see the balance in the two. So here is what I'll say. There are two city names that stand out in my mind. I will give them to you. They might change, and they might not be where you think they are now. One of them is Gunson, Gunson, and the other one is Aberwyth. It's Aberwyth. Those sound like they would be right around there. In the Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, we are going to have bullet-pointed names of cities. And it's not going to be like a history on every city with the mayor and all this, but just a cool paragraph of inspiration for that exact reason. If anyone is not planning on tuning in to Nate's mappening tomorrow night, like I said, please do that. But if you're not in the mood for maps and you don't really, that's not your thing, Drake Warren is running a Dragongrin game tomorrow. So if you're looking for an actual play, head over to the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, so you can see a link to that as well.
To be clear, Drake asked that question, and those answers are for his game.
I know.
Oh, okay. I was just making sure, because I realized after I pasted some of the questions in the chat that I didn't say who asked them, so I thought, wait a minute.
No. I figured as much. So yeah, Drake, I would say Gunson and Aberwyth. And thank you guys for, number one, for tuning in. Number two, for just being gracious as we progress in Dragongrin and as things change and as we come up with stuff. Like, everyone's so patient at the rate at which we make, content. And I want to make sure that we always have quality content. So we could push out a name of randomly generated names, or a list rather. That's not our style. Like, James and I comb through and say, this should be this name, this should be this name. So if you ever feel like, man, why are these guys so tight-lipped? Why don't they tell me something? It's like, it's because we care, and we want to tell you awesome stuff.
Like Tim said earlier, and specifically something we've said before, is the best way for us to really come up and really flesh stuff out is to play in it. And we don't play nearly enough to create a whole world. So that's why we're making the book we're making.
Exactly. So, yes. So that is that answer. Another question here. It's, are maps legal in Dragongrin? Can you get in trouble for having one? What do you think, Nate? And that's an unfair question.
But you know about as much as we do at this point.
Yeah, as the one on the outside here who has no control, no real control. Now, until now, you've given me some. I would say there would be questions asked if you had a map.
I love that.
I would say maybe they're not necessarily illegal, but someone might say, hey, why do you have this sort of thing?
Yeah, I could see maps being very valuable. And very few and far between. So if someone did have one, it would probably be outdated. And like you said, Nate, people would wonder where you got it, and it would be something that they would probably try and steal from you, potentially just because it's, again, they're very scarce. They're possibly not worth much, but maybe they are. So like you said, I wouldn't say that they were illegal, but I would say that they were rare, for sure.
Right.
And also, I think it might depend on how rare is writing and artwork and paper and ink.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to help determine how rare maps are, too.
That's a really good point.
Or even, I don't know, is there a printing press? I'm assuming probably not, but, that's another big...
Decide, yeah.
So, I would say in the neutral zone known as Innis, where people are allowed to live in between essentially orcs and the Dismembered Lord, paper is extremely rare, I would say, and ink is not necessarily important, So yeah, I think that having a map in there would be certainly raise a lot of eyebrows, like, what are you doing with a map? It'd be like, let me use this example too. If I had a copy of Mein Kampf, anyone who wasn't a Nazi would probably be offended, but the Nazis would probably see me as someone who aligned with their beliefs. So I think it depends what the map says. There was an event called Lightfall, and in the games we're running now, it was about 20 years prior. Does your map have Innis as it used to be and have the old geography? Or does your map now have the insignia of the Dismembered Lord? Essentially, are you carrying a copy of Mein Kampf, or are you carrying a copy of something that says, like, down with the Nazis? Because that's gonna depend on what happens.
Yeah, and in general, I think they'd be rare because, like you said, I mean, people are worrying about things a lot more than paper and ink. So it's the kind of thing where, in general, most of the maps likely would have been previous, from before Lightfall.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a couple more questions. I think we'll do like one or two more here.
Yeah.
Who is the most dominant force in Dragongrin? Who would have the power to have a map of the entire world drawn up? Any takers on that?
Well, so because I would say the important thing is in Dragongrin, if you saw Tim's Excel map earlier, there's one region that is sort of the area where we're focusing a lot right now, but there are a lot of other regions that exist. Basically the idea is I don't think that really anybody would have a map of the whole world, specifically because of the way the Bleak works. It's not about power, it's about, no, you can't get there to map it. Maybe there are maps, ancient drawings of before the Bleak, if that was ever a thing. It's the kind of thing where it's very unlikely that there is a map of the whole world. But also, based on that, I wouldn't say there's one major power. I'd say the Dismembered Lord is certainly the strongest in Grin, but in other places there are other leaders, that are strong, but they don't have power over each other. They don't really conflict because they can't really reach each other easily.
Yeah, and I would concur with that. So the idea is that it raises 2 points that just are interesting to me in this moment. Because I don't want to make the Dismembered Lord unscary. Like, I don't want to make... Because I think, to me, he's the most dangerous person. But I think what James is saying is true, is depending on what region you're in, depends on where the power shifts. But, you know, spoiler-free, if you watch Game of Thrones, some of the people with the most power are the ones who can plot, not necessarily the ones who have the most troops. So the Dismembered Lord is very crafty. He's very capable politically to move chess pieces around. So that's a long answer to say I love the idea that he is in the process of having a map of the known world commissioned. I think that would be interesting because I would love to run a campaign of basically cartographers who are dragged in who get sent away on missions to map places. I think that would be a really cool series of one-shots. The other thing is that he is wealthy enough and I think powerful enough and has an intellectual curiosity to the degree that he would send people to do that. And I just love that. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So there's that answer. Let's see. Not map related, but when's Tim's next session? My exact next session is Saturday. Is the whole series Crux or just the first episode? We haven't named it yet, and that is by design. I'm letting this thing just spread its roots out as organically as possible. I think we have something really special with that.
And to be clear, that's not it's not the same group as the last Dragongrin game.
Correct, and that is very clear. So this Saturday is a group that is separate, and that is called Quietus. That game is called Quietus because I am in this mode where I'm finding these sort of Latin or alternative words that sort of fit the theme of the session. Like crux means crucifix, I think, in Latin or Greek. So I did that on purpose, but it also means like the pivotal moment of something. But the idea is, I don't know what it's going to be called. And I've been tempted like 2 or 3 times to try to come up with a name, but I'm like, that's just not what this campaign's about. So I think we've been calling it the Crucified for now, like in the Facebook chat. Like Nate called us Crucifix.
Crucifix, yes.
All you Crucifix. And I think we'll do, there's a lot of questions here, but we'll do maybe like one. Oh, they're so good, though. James, do you want to pick one?
Well, I mean, I hate to do this, but I'm like, well, there are a few we can, like, knock right out.
Okay.
Like, real quick, but I'm like, so
Nate, let's do a boom, boom, boom.
Nate, do you add legends to the maps to show distances, or do you leave that to the viewer?
I leave that to the viewer. I'm totally open to doing one, and when I get around to doing a newer version of Inshar, my kind of original how to draw a map that I made of my homebrew world, I'm probably going to do that. Probably going to make a legend or, well, at least a scale I want to do. I don't know about a legend, but
yeah. Are there plans for something supplement for a Dragongrin bestiary where we see some reskinned homebrewed monster type content? I'm certainly not saying no to it. You know, I wouldn't rule it out, but nothing like that is on the schedule necessarily.
Yeah, and if we did anything, it probably wouldn't. And I'm nitpicking words here, but we probably wouldn't reskin anything, because folks can do that at home.
Well, so yeah. There would certainly be a bestiary, though. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But I just wanted to clarify that typically when we do stuff in our books, we try to make the stat blocks from scratch, and we might look at other things for inspiration, but usually we're building monster stat blocks. So if we did a bestiary, we're going to do it right and try to make them clear and different and interesting. Like if you look at, I don't want to spoil anything if you guys haven't finished Sewers Under Sandwall, but there are some monsters in there that have sort of unique properties that play off of one another so that it creates an interesting dynamic if you use this monster in a game. If it was just a reskinned gnoll or something, that's not really going to work for a bestiary. It would work in an adventure module, but I would be upset if I was a consumer and I went out and I bought something and I'm like, this is just reskinned stuff from the monster manual. So I get the question, but if we do a bestiary, it's going to be done right, and it's going to be unique monsters that have a different role at the table.
Yeah, so in short, yes, but of course it'll have the absolute tabletop spin on it.
Yeah.
And with mapping, isn't the design principle of less is more still true? Meaning, what is the value of white space in a map? And I think that is a good question to end on, because in Dragongrin, we are definitely going for not planning out every single little thing. Not only because it wouldn't be reasonable to try to do. We want people to run adventures. If there's a place on the map, in your Dragongrin there's nothing there, put something there. Make a monster there. Make a crater there. Make a temple there. You could just as easily, use some of the stuff we've written or we've published, but I think especially in Dragongrin, white space is very important on our map.
What about you, Nate? When you're designing a map for a client, do you sort of start sparse and then work together to fill things in?
I'm pretty satisfied with a lot of blank space, and I tend to get stressed out from a practical standpoint when it starts to get crowded. I start to think, oh no, I gotta, well, where am I gonna put the text? How am I gonna label all these things? They're too close together, and yeah. But I think there's value in both. I mean, they're just different styles. I've seen maps that are just dense, and every space is filled, and they look awesome. They're so cool. And I've seen maps that have a lot of blank space, and they're equally awesome. It's just, yeah.
I want to sneak one more question in because it's very related to this, and this is where we'll end. It says, Nate, character or geographical accuracy?
Character.
What do you say, James?
Same. Character, absolutely.
Me too. I will put an asterisk by that and say it absolutely depends on a lot of things. Well, here's why. In that one rare instance where it's a second edition D&D game where they count how many steps they take in a day, that can matter to one client. But if you're coming to me for a supplement or if you want me to help you with something, I'm going for character rather than real-world accuracy.
Yeah, exactly. I would say it's your preference. Yeah. I mean, like you said, some people are going to map everything out, but my preference is character.
Right, and on that Dragongrin map, I want character. Geographical accuracy is not important.
Yeah, and I kind of struggle with that because as I learn more about geography slowly, I'm still not there, but I have trouble then going back and putting something on the map that I know is inaccurate. So in the map I'm doing right now, there's a spot, and this is a map it's magically formed, so I should just not worry about it, throw it out. I'm still going to mention to the client and say, what about this? Because there's this one spot and there's multiple rivers that split out of it. It's that doesn't happen. But I think I need to get past that and say, no, this was magically formed. There was some huge cataclysmic event, and there must be something going on here. But I am going to mention it to him and just say, just so you know.
Yeah.
But if they're, just so that he knows, and because he might think that's geographically accurate and want everything geographically accurate, so I'll just let him know. And if he doesn't, great. Build an awesome story around the fact that is different.
Yeah, and I love that because that's why I'm awful at maps. Until Be a Better Campaign Master Book 1 came out, I didn't understand the simple geography that went into map making. So I would need you to tell me that as a client. And then there's a part of me that's thinking, I would totally think that that's important because your reputation is kind of on the line. And people who are more savvy could see that map and say, oh, wow, this guy doesn't know simple geography. So do you find yourself saying, okay, well, if we're going to make this a different thing formed by magic, I'm going to make a little fountain here and make some little star sparkles or something so that people know this thing's magical and that I don't, that I know a little bit of geography?
I'm not going to stress that. It's just going to be what it is. And when I post stuff on Reddit or on the Cartographers Guild, people give me feedback, and I really appreciate the feedback they give me. And I've had stuff like that, and I mentioned, there was one thing that I can't remember that did come up, and I said, oh, there's a reason for it in this guy's world. That's all I said.
Well, there you go.
I don't know it, but he told me there is.
Right. 'Cause magic.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Well, any final thoughts or anything you want to say in closing, Nate?
No, I mean, I'm really excited for this Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin and all the stuff you guys put out. A bestiary, that would be awesome, I gotta admit. And I know that'd be a lot of work. It's probably a long way off, but man, yeah.
Cool, man. That's good to know. we're definitely toying with. We'll see. We've got a lot of ideas in the works, and that's one of the problems. And Nate, you probably feel the same way. You wish you had all the time in the universe to do every commission offer that you got. You know, it's like, oh man, I wish I just had two of me to sit and write supplements.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate working with you guys, and I love the stuff you do. So it's an honor to be a part of it.
Awesome, man. James, anything you want to say in closing?
No, this has been a lot of fun. It's been great talking to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you guys too.
Cool. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. All you people in the chat live, thank you so much. I'm Tim with Tabletop Terrors, obviously joined by James, and tonight a very special guest, Nate from WASD20. This is just the first step in our journey. Follow us. The Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin is probably the most interesting undertaking that James and I have decided to push through with in Absolute Tabletop, because we want to create a campaign guidebook that is inspirational and detailed, and sometimes those things fight each other, so we're trying to find a good balance. So watch upcoming videos. In the future, we're going to have a mapping with Nate, probably in August sometime, and at that point, maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll actually be working on the Dragongrin map with Nate live on the air, maybe. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, thanks for watching. Subscribe. Be sure to share this video, like, the thumbs up, the comments. We love the comments. Find a game. Find people to play with. Go to the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group. Just search Absolute Tabletop in Facebook, and we'll approve your membership. It's a great place to get in games like Drake's game that he's running on Friday, and all kinds of great conversation. Have a great night, an awesome weekend, a happy and safe 4th of July, and until next time, may your dice roll high.